good day, everyone. I'm your host, James Hicks, here from Hicks New Media. Welcome to Perspectives in Focus, where we focus and highlight the people, industries, ideas, and technology that is making positive strides within society. Today's guests, I have the team from Basile Law Firm that represents both private and public companies in complex financial and securities litigation situations, everything from convertible notes and merchant funding litigation, SEC dealer registration violations, securities fraud, and federal and state RICO violations. This team is one of the best in the business, and the folks I got behind the scenes right now are proof of that. I also have Mr. Dennis O'Leary, who is the founder of DarkPulse, a Scottsdale, Arizona-based technology startup that is focused on the manufacture, sale, installation, and monitoring of laser sensing systems based on its patented BOTNA DarkPulse sensor technology. I even know what BOTNA stands for, Brilliant Optical Time Domain Analysis. Hopefully I gained a couple of cool points. I'm looking at him. He's smiling in the back of the room, so hopefully that's good stuff. I've got an interesting connection with one of his projects that we're going to bring him on so we can talk about that. Ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let me bring on my guests so we can say hello. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Welcome to Perspectives in Focus.
How you doing, James?
Thank you. Good to be here.
Fantastic, fantastic. This is a stellar panel that we have here. Mr. O'Leary, of course, having a little bit of internet connection issues because you're dialing in from not Arizona, not New Jersey, not New York. You're dialing in from where, sir?
I am in Cairo, Egypt.
Right. And, you know, I made the joke behind the scenes during the pre-show about that's definitely not IKEA furniture behind him there. Ladies and gentlemen, again, Mr. O'Leary is in Cairo. So thank you, sir, for the time. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Basile, yourself, the man on the moniker, it is great to see you, sir. How are you today?
Good. A little tired. We just had a full day here in New York, but we're going to go.
Fantastic, fantastic. And Gus, we've been doing this. Look, this is an old hat for us, and pleasure to have you on as well. Let me, again, I think there's no better way than have the folks tell their own origin story. So let's start with you, Mr. Basile. If you could just tell the folks again who you are and what it is that you do, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Well, it really depends who you ask. I can only tell you what I think we do. I've been a lawyer for 34 years. I've also taught law at a law school. I've had 2 public companies myself. I have dealt with funding instruments that tend to ruin shareholder value, kind of learned the hard way directly, able to extricate ourselves out of that. I decided to focus on finance law that deals with public company funding. During my tenure as the CEO of 2 public companies, raised close to $100 million, made innovative products that ended up at Honeywell and Home Depot, Masterlock, dealing with fingerprint and biometric technology. Then I retired, and friends of mine who were CEOs of other public companies were asking me for advice because they knew I was an attorney and I also stood in their shoes. So I came from the unique vantage point of having both been the CEO of public companies and dealing with all of the various funding, presentation, Wall Street, and shareholder issues, as well as all the legal issues from a legal standpoint, dealing with contracts, compliance. I dealt with dozens of securities attorneys, PC, AOB audit firms. I've even spoken at the accounting and finance show, putting on seminars for certified CPAs, as well as PC, AOB audits companies. And my dad actually started the practice in 1968. He was a tax attorney. I didn't like numbers, so I didn't go into accounting. So I decided to go into law. And I decided not to do tax law, but I did secure transactions, commercial litigation. Out of law school, I worked for one of the largest law firms in the world called Shea & Gould. Then I got burned out in about a year and a half. I ended up on Long Island with a small firm. And then my dad just basically said, after a couple of years, why don't you join our firm? I joined the firm. He was on his way towards retirement. And I just decided, I was going to speak for the people who can't speak for themselves, speak for the CEOs who were kind of caught up and taken off guard by some of the deals that they've taken. A lot of them out of desperation, mind you. But the type of deals they were taking was like crack cocaine. It came fast. They closed in 2 days. They got hooked on it. It was easy money. Little did they know it really came down to trading volume and stock price, and whether or not 6 months down the line, the lender can get out by converting it into stock. And we'll talk about all that crazy nonsense later. But I had my friends coming to me, asking me if I can help them. So I was involved in a couple of high-profile New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ company raises and IPOs. And I just felt that, the consulting led to joining my father's firm and, taking the issues of bad financing deals. And I guess we started making a name for ourselves. We used to defend lawsuits brought by toxic lenders on behalf of public company issuers. And the tide has changed in the last couple of years. And now the issuers are kind of taking it to the streets themselves to try to get back their shareholders' stock or cash value of the stock that may have been unlawfully taken through their transactions. So it's just, I've built the firm from the ground up at this point. We just added a Florida litigator named Tisha Powell. She joined the firm. She's going to be running our Naples, Florida office. Gus, I knew Gus. Can I say you were in my law school class, Gus? Gus.
Yeah, I mean, I've actually been waiting for it. I was going to be a little offended if you didn't mention it. So.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'm still holding back your check for one more week. You know why. So in any event, Gus was one of my star students, and when he graduated, I think I reached out to you and asked him to come join the firm. Gus has been a complete star with our firm. Our clients love him. He got up to speed within a year. He really knows this stuff inside and out. A little scary because he may know some of the stuff better than I do.
Wow.
We also have Eric Benzenberg, a tremendous securities litigator. He's senior counsel here with our firm. Just hired my son, Chris, who recently passed the bar and was recently admitted. And we have our Texas attorney, Tyler Berger, who runs our Dallas, Texas office. And everybody is kind of focused on trying to help small public companies right the ship. And it's very important because, as all your viewers know, it's the OTC marketplace. There's an opportunity to make a lot of money. There's also a lot of opportunity to lose a lot of money. And I guess we'll talk a little bit later about all those things. But as far as the firm is concerned, right now we represent, I think, 41 public companies in various aspects of litigation, mostly centering around toxic debt litigation. We have a couple of shareholder dispute litigations. We're also working with an outside group to identify fraudulent, misleading, inappropriate Twitter posts and social media posts that are designed to scare normal shareholders out of their stock or the effect of possibly hurting the company. We're also conducting in-house investigations regarding to other companies and their stock performance based upon public filings, social media posts, and what have you. We're not crusaders. We're attorneys. We leave the office. We all have our own lives and stuff. When we're in the office, there's a lot of camaraderie amongst the attorneys with regard to our mission, and that's to represent our clients zealously, do what we can to straighten out bad financing deals, and then kind of clean them up. Hopefully that then they can go out and raise clean capital and maybe uplist to a national exchange. And we've had a couple of companies to do that already. So that's kind of like, it's like a reward for us that if we're able through litigation or the other half of our firm that does public company restructurings to clean them up, clean up their cap table, clean up their balance sheet, make them a presentable company for clean funding that will help either with acquisitions or acquisitions with a simultaneous listing on a national exchange. I mean, that's our main goal.
Gotcha.
We want to see the companies succeed. We work intimately, and you'll see, later on, Dennis and I will have some conversations online for your audience to talk about our relationship and how that started. But I have to tell you that we're fairly happy with all of the CEOs and all of the public companies we represent. They have a similar mindset to Dennis. Dennis is one of the more active ones and very aggressive, as he should be. So
Awesome.
That's basically us in a nutshell.
Awesome. Appreciate that. And look, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you, sir, because I know you rarely come and do interviews such as this. So you being able to carve some of your time out and give that backstory, right? And give some of that for everyone listening and watching. Really appreciate you on that. Gus Passanante, talk to us, man. It's going to be hard to follow that up, right? But what's a day in the life for you as you sit there and represent clients within your portfolio, sir?
I mean, I don't know what else I could say to add on to that, but usually I'll wake up to a few emails from Dennis asking me to do something that seems next to impossible. No, I'm just kidding. It's not that bad. But it's mostly like that. We a lot of our clients are just like Dennis. They got into these deals and they come to us to do something about it. Some more aggressive than others. Like Mark said, Dennis is one of our more aggressive, and just as he should be, especially as the tides are turning. Like Mark said, in the last couple of years, things have really started going our way, especially in the dealer registration aspect. And in terms of a lot of this toxic financing and these convertible notes. So when we get retained, we analyze whatever position our client's in, whether it be in a defensive posture, if they got sued, or if we're going to be in a more offensive posture, and we can kind of create the narrative and tell the story in our initial pleading. Obviously, analyze within that complaint or within that initial filing, we're going to analyze the position that our client's in, whether they issued 5 billion shares or 100 million shares or whatever it may be, and analyze the value of those shares and figure out what we can do to make sure that they're in the best position to either defend themselves or be on offense and try and take back what's theirs, like how we are in a lot of cases that we have with Dennis. And I don't want to get too much into it because I want to show everyone how to use Edgar and kind of like what I really do every single day and kind of be in the trenches. And
no worries.
I mentioned Mike Rowe and Dirty Jobs. I mean, this is pretty much my version of it. I'm going to show you guys later. So
I love it.
But yeah, that's more or less what we do.
I appreciate it. Dennis O'Leary, you are out here doing the good work. Saved you for last because really would like it at this point, if you could tell folks who may not know the Dennis O'Leary story, tell them who you are, what it is that you do, why you're in Cairo, which is, again, just as I was doing my research, the stuff that you're doing is fascinating. And then as you're talking about your real-time 3D internal and external graphic, I'm not even going to try it, right? I want, it's going to come better coming from you. And if you don't mind telling us about what DarkPulse is, sir.
Yeah, so how did it start? I've always kind of been a tech geek and won every science award from second grade right through high school. And anyway, the way I came across DarkPulse, I was actually asked to go to a cross-border, conference. It was between Canada and the United States. It was up in Chicago. And just to give you a hint at fate and how the planets align sometimes, I almost didn't go. And the only reason why I did go is the group that was sending me actually had paid for my flight and my hotel room. So I thought, okay, I better go. And I ended up meeting the tech transfer officer from a Canadian university called University of New Brunswick. And they actually showcased about a dozen technologies for me. And DarkPulse was one of the few that stood out. And I negotiated the purchase the patents. And basically spun it out of the University of New Brunswick, called the company DarkPulse because the patent was on a dark pulsing technique on laser sensing, and kind of took it from there.
So that's the history. No,
I don't want to go too heavy.
No, listen, look, we can peel back the onion and we can go from a 101 to a 201, 301 layer type of conversation. I want to talk a little bit about some of the terms that you're using, the speed of dark. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Batman vision. I want to talk about the smart bridges, because one of the bridges that you've actually integrated into, made smart, the world's first smart bridge in Marysville. I pass that bridge. My family passes that bridge every weekend. My kids are actually going over that bridge tonight on their way to Orville to our family cabin. So that's how I have an intimate relationship just with what you've done. Talk a little bit about that technology that you put into some of these infrastructure pieces.
Yes. So again, it's this dark pulsing technique. I can tell you the difference in terms of distributed fiber sensors. There's bright pulsing and then ours, dark pulsing. Both techniques have been around for a number of years. The difference between us and the other techniques is the resolutions, and it's in meters, unfortunately. So typically it's 1 meter resolution. That basically means anything less than a meter in area is generally not going to be detected by that system. Whereas with us, we've gone our resolutions as low as 10 millimeters, so very high resolutions. And in terms of getting to the bridge, it's just multiple field trials over the last 10 years. And what really brought us was I was tweeting on Twitter, of course, and somebody from Caltrans actually saw the tweet and reached out by email, and we negotiated this pilot project. And how I got to Marysville, rather than wait the 9 months for California to actually fund the pilot project, I decided, well, what if we pay for that pilot project? Can we sort of accelerate this? And the answer was yes. And we were given the Marysville project because it was already had begun.
Okay.
So we're actually deploying into there at no charge, but of course, once we're live, there's monitoring that will kind of recover the initial investment. So it was just getting the first one out there, because every time you go into a business meeting, what's the first thing they say? How many of these have you sold?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So now we can actually move to California, right?
Fantastic.
So that's how we ended up in Marysville. Yeah.
Yeah, again, as I was doing my research, and when I saw the news clippings from KCRA3, when I saw them from Fox, I said, listen, my son and daughter are going to be crossing that bridge in about 4 hours. So I've got my siblings and my children in your capable hands. Appreciate that. Let's now talk a little bit about, I guess, the relationship between Basile, DarkPulse, and then why that matters, and kind of back to the subject matter of today's conversation, why it really having proper representation is critical and is important. I guess some of the stories and behind the scenes things that you and Mark have gone through, you, Mark, and Gus have gone through, if you don't mind delving into some of that. And yes, folks, I see folks in the comments talking about the internet connection. Listen, again, the man is 5,000 miles away. He's got dogs barking in the background, but that is the beauty of live streaming. We're bringing it to you. This is what we do. Take it and love it and enjoy it. So that being said, I'm going to let you two just interject and go again about the value of working together and what that's brought you, Dennis, and to your company.
Yeah, Mark mentioned it earlier, sort of falling into the trap toxic convertible notes. For me, yeah, I started with the wrong team. I've said it multiple times, and the bulk of what was brought in was by the original team that came into DarkPulse, and it got us in the debt spiral. We were down to no bid on that stock, and for me, rather than do a reverse split, I actually started funding the company myself to about $117,000, and that kept us alive, and really got us at the time to turn the company around. And then, of course, from there, it's had its up and downs in terms of stock price, but in terms of the growth of the company, it's just been phenomenal over the last, 14, 15 months. But I'm fortunate. Most companies that get into that death spiral, they call it, there's a good reason they call it a death spiral. They don't recover. And here we are. We're in 10 countries now. There's 7 companies, after a series of acquisitions. We just announced that we hired EIIP out of Houston to help us with another acquisition. So really just a phenomenal change from where we were, just over a year ago.
I'm going to say, and Mark, I guess, where did your team interject to help Dennis get to the light? Right, he's focused on the dark, but how did you help him, I guess, get to the light and get to a better state of being for himself, the company, and possibly even for the shareholders?
Yeah, well, I think Dennis, we go back a year and a half, 2 years, and when Dennis and I first had a conversation, he was introduced to me through another attorney, and the conversation went something like this: I've got these people bothering me. They're convertible note holders. Our stock isn't doing well. I have a lot of good things on the horizon. And we discussed about those things. Dennis explained to me some of the things he had in the works. I had to make an evaluation for ourselves whether or not this is a real company. It's not that they took toxic loans and flew to Hawaii and took the office staff for, a month vacation there. I mean, hearing that Dennis was forced to fund the company himself personally, going through the history of the original management team, the problems that DarkPulse is now experiencing or has experienced in the last year and a half, 2 years, because of some of the decisions and some other events that transpired with that prior team. He asked us to take a look at all of the debt that's on the books, and this allowed us to look at 8 or 9 different convertible notes with 6 or 7 different lenders. We did internal calculations on if they all converted out over 100 an 18-month period starting in 180 days, what's the company's outstanding stock going to look like at that point? And knowing that the damage, what these convertible note fixed percentage discounts are to the market price of the stock at the time of these conversions, and how I've seen it not only in my companies, but my friends' companies and my clients' companies, how you can easily have a $3 stock and 6 to 9 months later, you could be trading sub-penny, especially if you have 4 or 5 of these guys all converting and hitting in the market at the same time, trying to jump in front of each other. It does nothing but drive the price down. And a lot of your viewers, a lot of the retail traders are really good at looking at trends and identifying dips and peaks with regard to the trading patterns of a stock. But the more important thing is to identify the problems that a company may have before it affects your holdings. And that's something Gus will talk about with you, James, a little later, about how to use Edgar and how to read a company's filings and to see what's coming down the pike, both from the business standpoint and from the stock play standpoint as well. Because that's really, really critical. A lot of people don't put 2 and 2 together. So when we looked at Dennis's transaction documents, some of the prior history, just some of the deals, they were just so onerous. We had a feeling that some of the transactions violated certain state usury laws. Some of the transactions may have violated securities laws, federal securities laws regarding dealer registration. or securities fraud under 10B, material misrepresentations or omissions in the transaction documents. And, you know, and I don't think it's really, unless the CEO is taking these toxic loans again and going on these trips and buying Ferraris and stuff. I don't think any of these legitimate CEOs really understand the long-term effects of these types of transactions, whether it's a convertible note, it's an equity line of credit, which, excuse the language, but that's just bullshit. There is no equity line of credit. Nobody's giving you $10 million up front that you can draw off of. They're using your stock. Every time you need money, you put a put in an equity line of credit. They get the stock, they sell it, they take their discount, and they give the company back whatever the balance of the funds are. Usually, again, sort of mimicking in reverse a convertible note. Then you have these ridiculous new forms of agreements, these the preferred equity purchase deals that are really disguised convertible notes. It's just almost the identical terms. And I think I blogged an article from our website comparing the new type of lending instrument and what a bunch of crap that is. You know, I'm trying to alert the CEOs that, hey, get your heads out of your asses. You know, you may have taken bad deals and you've got a lot of shareholders to stand up for. And you may have a fiduciary duty to stand up for your shareholders and try to claw back the stock. Imagine billions and billions of shares on the OTC market that have been distributed. If you look at any of the public PACER, the federal government online court filings, and you look at some of these SEC actions against some of these toxic convertible note lenders, and you will see tens of billions of shares that they alone were able to convert over, a 1 to 3 year period. I mean, you know how much tens of millions of dollars that represents that they've taken out of the market just on one issuer. It's unbelievable. So, after reviewing Dennis's books, we sat down with Dennis. And we said, Dennis, here's what you have going on. Here's the law regarding this transaction. Here's the law that we see it regarding this transaction. This one may be a little shaky, but if you're willing to go forward, we have a good faith basis to do it. We have other case law that says we were right, or we have a pathway to litigate. And you know what? Dennis was not afraid to pull the trigger. I mean, look, there are CEOs who know right now that they have loans on their books that are convertible toxic debt that's going to hurt their shareholders.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't care about their shareholders. What they do, though, is they care about the longevity of the company. And again, convertible note money is like crack cocaine. You get a little bit from one, they come back to you in a month or two. Hey, you want another $35,000, $40,000? Yeah, because now you know they can wire it to you in 48 hours and you have more money to play with. The problem is, but this was not in Dennis's case, but a lot of other CEOs, what they'll do is they'll try to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. So what I mean is you take a convertible note for $100,000. In 5 months, you start panicking because in a month from that point, they're going to come into the market and they're going to destroy your stock. They're going to do it piecemeal in tranches, like every couple of days. They'll convert more and more, drive your price down, get that discount over the then market price, and continue to sell until there's basically nothing else left, right? They have all sorts of bullshit default provisions and onerous, unconscionable other terms. They've had these daily penalty provisions at Southern District of New York courts and said, no, those are void. They're unconscionable. They're not designed to make you whole. They're designed to gorge and gouge the company. Basically, that's what the Southern District of New York does. And a lot of other districts in Massachusetts feel the same way about those types of penalties. So when we sat down with Dennis, we kind of reviewed each one of the lenders, where they're located, what law would apply, who's going to try what. And we had a couple of, right, Dennis? We had one maneuver by one toxic lender who still may think it's working, but we don't think it's going to work for him for too much longer. But Dennis decided that, we have to start somewhere. And at that point, one of the toxic lenders had just sued DarkPulse. This is the case that we have going on in Minnesota right now. And, that case, like all these cases, it's drawn out. It's a lot of litigation, a lot of discovery. You've seen some public disclosures based upon public records. They made a motion to dismiss. We beat them back. They made a motion for summary judgment. They beat them back. We made a motion to compel discovery. The judge agreed with us. He's awarding our attorney's fees to do that. And that's just like a microcosm of 7 or 8 other cases that we're representing DarkPulse in right now. And it's not an easy task, because these toxic funders have more money than you can possibly imagine. And they're out hiring white shoe law firms from Washington, D.C.,
Wow.
from New York City. They're paying, huge legal fees to defend themselves. Because if they get one bad decision on any of these specific topics, it could ruin their entire portfolio of business. And they may not be able to conduct business that way going forward again. That's what we're having right now in the state of New York in the federal court cases with the criminal usury statutes. Because remember, the convertible note operates that after 180 days under the Rule 144 holding period, they can convert out a certain amount of principal and stated interest into stock at a fixed percentage rate discount. So that means if you're trading at $1 and they get a 30% discount, they're going to get $100 worth of stock at 70 cents a share. So that's more than 100,000 shares, right? And they'll sell that, drop the price to 80, and now they get the same fixed discount. Say it's 30% to the 80-cent price of the stock. So they're getting stock at what? 60 cents, 58 cents.
Yeah.
They could drive the price down to 58 cents. Then they'll convert a little bit more principal, and that's called the death spiral. That'll keep happening until they've completely exhausted under what they think are all the terms under their notes. So, and it's not like I haven't taken my lumps, trying to fight this good fight on behalf of my clients and their shareholders. I mean, I've had my head handed to me in no less than 11 cases in the Southern District of New York. Every time I said, no, these transactions are criminally usurious. That discount rate is interest by law under New York state law. And they came up with all of these cockamamie excuses to try to save the transaction. No, as soon as you convert, it becomes an equity. It's not a loan subject to usury. No, the discount is too speculative. We can't determine what that amount is, so you can't count it as interest, and therefore it's not criminally usurious. So 11 lower court decisions that went against us and said, no, you're wrong. Your motion to dismiss is denied. We finally were able to bring 2 cases up on appeal. One of those cases, both to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, one of those cases, the judges on that panel recognized that what we were saying was grounded in law dating back almost 170 years by the New York Court of Appeals.
Wow.
Indicating that option discount is interest. And they specifically said it's not speculative. That's what the trial courts are there to do, to tell you what that discount percentage is equal to in an effective interest rate. And by the way, the mere fact that you converted some of the debt into stock doesn't make it an equity. It's still subject to the criminal usury statutes, right? And this would apply also to Florida, Texas, Massachusetts, California, almost every state that allows corporations to defend themselves or prosecute a criminally usurious transaction. So finally the Second Circuit said, you know what? You may be right, but we're not going to be the ones to tell our 11 lower court judges they were wrong. We're going to punt this over to the New York Court of Appeals, who's in the best situation to interpret their state legislative laws. So we had to go through a whole briefing schedule. It took another year worth of briefing and tens of thousands of dollars of effort briefing these things. And in fact, the goal of one of these toxic lenders not involved in the case filed an amicus brief trying to kind of save their business model, because they know that if the New York Court of Appeals agreed with us, that every one of their transactions could face the same ramifications. Because under New York law, if it's criminally usurious, the loan is void. That means you lose your interest, all your principal, and under New York law, you cannot seek any equitable remedy. It's prohibited. So it's pretty earth-shattering. So the New York Court of Appeals just decided these two issues back in October and sent it back down to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. So one of the cases we have under appeal, they vacated the trial court judgment, basically saying, New York Court of Appeals spoken, this is New York law, you got it wrong, now you're going to have to figure out what this conversion discount actually means for effective interest. And spoiler alert, we've already conducted 3 different models, and they far exceed New York State's criminal usury threshold of 25% interest. So,
wow.
Yeah. So knowing that, and knowing that's applicable, we can apply that under Florida's usury statutes, in Massachusetts and California. We have other companion litigation in those states on the federal securities issue of dealer registration and 10B securities fraud. So it's funny, but it's not funny. Sorry, Dennis. It's really not funny. But it's just funny how it all happened, that the timing of that decision in New York, with what the SEC has been doing in their securities enforcement actions, kind of put DarkPulse on a firm, good faith basis footing to not only defend against the toxic lender in Minnesota, but actually to bring several other actions, which Dennis has subsequently done against other toxic lenders. And again, on behalf of the shareholders. This isn't something like, oh, I want to prove I'm right or this. Dennis understands that as the CEO, he has a fiduciary duty to his shareholders. And he's told me on numerous occasions that he's got sort of this moral understanding that this is just the right thing to do for his shareholders. And what may happen, I mean, look, I think the collective amount of lawsuits right now we're suing, Dennis is looking to get back between $10 and $15 million for the company. Now imagine if the courts say you have to give back $10 or $15 million worth of stock. Could the court require them to go into the market and buy the stock and return the stock to the company? Possibly. I don't think they have a snowball's chance in hell. I don't think that the toxic lenders will have the resources to go back and buy millions of dollars worth of stock, because you know what that will do to an issuer's stock price. It'll send it through the roof. And then the retail traders will have a field day. So I think that a likely result, if we're successful, is that they're going to issue a money judgment, which represents the value of that stock. And, if they're reviewing these things with Dennis was like, yeah, you know what? This is something I need to do. And this is something I want to do. Not because, yeah, I'm aggravated, the former management helped get you into most of these problems, but he's always mentioned doing things for the shareholders. And, there are a couple of rare CEOs on the OTC markets that really care about their shareholders as much as Dennis does. And this is one reason, after reviewing everything he had and our discussions with him, this is one reason why we stepped up to the table to represent DarkPulse.
Amazing. Dennis, I'm going to let you chime in on that, but I do want to say I appreciate you, Mark, for going into that backstory, right? Because again, kind of as we were saying during the pre-show, that part right there wasn't necessarily scripted or wasn't planned, but just having you go through the why, the how, and the rationale behind the collaboration and the working relationship you have. That's the value in it right there. That's already answered the 3 main questions that I've got queued up here already, right? You've already addressed the questions that folks have asked, but I still want to bring them on. And Dennis, I didn't know if you wanted to comment on what Mr. Basile was talking about before I bring up those questions.
Yeah, I mean, that pretty much was the conversation. And yeah, I hate to quote a movie, but it's not personal, it's just business. And I just felt like we were done dirty. And it's just, again, aside from fiduciary duty, anyone can cite that. I just felt it was the right thing to do for shareholders. And I think everybody understands that about me.
Definitely. At that point, let me bring this up and ask you both, gentlemen, this question here from RR. Oh my goodness, let me make that a little bit smaller. My question for both Dennis and or Gus is: DarkPulse currently trying to fix or get rid of billions of DarkPulse shares caused by the toxic lenders? There is around 3 billion DarkPulse shares. I believe that was kind of already part of the discussion that you were having, Mark. But again, I'm gonna put that out there for you guys.
Yeah, kind of like what Mark said. I mean, that's always been Dennis's goal. Dennis has always been for the shareholders, always trying to put himself in their shoes and always do what's best for the company. Obviously, he understands the ramifications that have happened because of because of a lot of the toxic debt that the company ended up taking on. And of course that's always going to be the goal, right? Is to get all of that toxic debt off the books, whether it be by taking those shares back, like Mark said, either having those lenders buy those shares back or obtaining a money judgment worth the value of whatever stock that they took. So yeah, that's the goal. Absolutely.
Awesome. 2 more questions I wanted to bring up from Senior Miss Val. If the court does not rule for full disclosure of pattern selling by a company, how else can you prove dumping could be taking place?
So I think that I'll kind of try and respond to that in the best way that we can. A lot of the claims that we assert aren't necessarily in relation to dumping or market manipulation. We've done it before. We've done it in the past. But we feel like, and I've said this on other podcasts before. I'm not sure if I've spoke to you about this, James, but it's a lot harder to state a claim for market manipulation. Any kind of claims under 10b-5, under Rule 10b-5 or under Section 10b under the Act are a lot harder to state, only because they have that heightened pleading standard. So we always feel it's best to advise our clients to go after that lower pleading standard where we know we can win. We know what these people do, and I'm going to get into that later, using Edgar and how we figure out whether a lender is an unregistered dealer or not, or whether they're acting as a dealer and we know that they're not registered via broker check or some other kind of FINRA mechanism. And so we feel like we can achieve those same kind of goals that our clients have without necessarily alleging or proving market manipulation or somebody dumping stock. Of course, if we're in the position where, for example, a client calls us on a random afternoon and says, "Hey, we see a sale order for 150 million shares," and that's going to it's just going to really overtake the market, really influence the market in a way that obviously our client doesn't want it to. Then we'll take action. And that might be necessary for a different kind of analysis to get, let's say, a TRO or some kind of injunctive relief. But generally, that's not a necessary element for our regular claims. Hopefully that answers that question.
Okay. Appreciate that. I'll bring one more question before we move on. Again, from the same person. What makes an unregistered dealer appeal to companies versus a registered dealer?
So that's interesting. Mark, feel free to add to this if you want, but I don't think that's really the appeal. No one's saying, "Oh, look, let's go to the unregistered dealer." Like Mark said, it's like crack cocaine. I mean, they're wiring money in 2 days. No one's checking if they're a dealer, if they're not a dealer. They just know they can get money in 2 days, and it's going to be pretty much no strings attached, or what the company may seem to believe is no strings attached, until 181 days later, and they submit a conversion notice for $3 million worth of stock off of a $40,000 loan, right? So it's not like we're looking for unregistered dealers or we're looking for registered dealers. We're looking for money, right? The company's looking for money, and the way they're going to get that money is by somebody who can give it to them fast. And the people that give it to them fast are these unregistered dealers. Mark, I think you might want to add to that a little bit.
Yeah. If you're dealing with a registered dealer, the registered dealer is subject to a lot of oversight by FINRA and the SEC. Mm-hmm. So they're constrained with regard to certain types of lending instruments they can loan. they have to follow certain regulations. They have to deal with compliance with FINRA and the SEC. They have to file disclosures, and a lot of these unregistered dealers don't do that. That's why their conversion discount rate is much higher, their percentage discount. That's why they have in their documents what's called a blocker. It's usually at 4.99%, because anything over 5% of a company's stock that you acquire, you have to report on an SEC filing. So what these guys do, these unregistered dealers, they fly under the radar. You can see just in the loan documents how they want to avoid reporting, but they also want to avoid the oversight by FINRA. And so the appeal for going with unregistered dealers is they can close really quick. I think, I've dealt with a few registered dealers and transactions, and their process is much slower because they have a lot of compliance on their back end that they're going to have to explain why they did this transaction, why it's these terms or whatever, and they're within their compliance field for FINRA, right? And registered dealers also have a compliance officer in-house that communicates regularly with FINRA back and forth in the SEC. So, Ms. Val or whoever she was, there is an incentive for more questionable OTC market companies to constantly go back to the well and use these convertible notes from unregistered dealers versus from registered dealers, because the process takes much longer. And companies are desperate for cash nowadays, right?
Right.
So hope that answers her question.
Appreciate that. And again, folks, if you have a question for the panel, please put a Q in front of it so I can put that in the queue, and I can bring that to their attention. Dennis, I want to position a question to you specifically, just based off the conversation that we've had. Look, you've gone through the mud. You've gone through some hard times, right? Just with the DarkPulse acquisition, being part of who you are and where you are now with the organization, the litigation that's happening. But as I started out as saying when I introduced you, you're doing some good work. And I think talking about the activities that are going on within your organization, I'd love to just hear you talk about, again, maybe some of the initiatives that you've either signed or dealt with, nothing that's non-disclosable, of course, but any dealings that you've had that you can talk to the folks who are either financially associated from a shareholder perspective or just interested in the company and interested in the technology. Again, third person remove, I'm just interested in the technology. I utilize what you've built. Again, I've already told that story a few minutes ago about how my family utilizes that bridge. So I'm just selfishly interested in DarkPulse. And I think this is a great segue for you to say, again, you had these litigation issues, you've had these problems, you've got shareholders on the line right now who are asking questions and are getting answers, but what's next, right? What are you doing today and tomorrow to continue to propel the company forward?
Yeah, sure. And unfortunately, litigation has to be part of that plan as well too. And I always like to say, and shareholders know, my main thing is, I don't bluff. And in the instance of the Twitter litigation, going after, not just people that post FUD, but people that are damaging the reputation of the company and damaging the shareholders. So that's the focus. It's not, you say personally about myself or anybody in the company. It's when you cross that line to either libel or you're trying to manipulate stock price by writing these negative, false narratives. That's when I'm going to come after you. So it's nothing personal. It's the business that we're all working hard to grow and to protect the shareholders. So anytime that comes up, you can 100% guarantee I'm coming after you. So just want to make that clear. On the business side of things, I joked before we started, I don't have jet lag because I sleep 2 or 3 hours a day. It's pushed in 2 a.m. here in Cairo. And, I do whatever is necessary to get this thing successful. And again, you look over the 12 months, 6 acquisitions or 5 acquisitions, but DarkPulse Canada is also a subsidiary. So 7 companies, revenues. We did like close to 4 million, in the 6 weeks, period of when we acquired the other companies. We continue to drive towards revenue. We continue to create revenues. We have the Smart Bridge project. Again, that I wanted to just get out there as, something I could point to that's real in the market. It's actually helped quite a bit. I'm in Cairo. We're, talking to what's going to be really a cutting edge AI-driven resort, very high-end resort. And part of the process is installing our sensor technology, but then also being an integrator. And we're working with Siemens on this project where we can help integrate multiple systems into one user interface. And that includes the proprietary stuff that we've been working on. So this is, really pushing us towards, I guess, our first, major project for DarkPulse itself. And like I say, it's a 20-hour-a-day process, right? So you're either all in or, it's just not happening, right?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I need a haircut because they've been on the road for 9 weeks. I haven't been home for 9 weeks. And so.
Well, I've seen some of your Twitter feed, and you'll land home, you'll repack a bag, and then you'll turn back around and you'll go on to the next place. So I think that due diligence, that focus, that concerted, always moving forward for the company and for your shareholders, I must say that is summed up in this message right here. Atreyu says that I can read people like a book. You have a beautiful soul. Where does this caring nature come from? Right? Again, because you wouldn't do what you do, be away from your family, be away from your friends, and only be focusing on these activities if it wasn't innate to you, right? Again, you almost can't teach that. Just the fact that you stepped into this role knowing again that there were some issues to deal with, but you saw the promise, and you see the promise of the technology and where it is today and where it's going. Again, is that something that you think you got from family, got from friends, got from education? Just what makes Dennis O'Leary, I guess. Let me ask that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, definitely my family. And it was funny. My parents were very entrepreneurial as well, and I guess this work ethic that kind of got driven into me. But I always try to do the right thing, and part of it too, 8 years NYPD, and I've always done the right thing. I've never hurt a person, when I was a police officer, and I always protected the working man. That's how I always viewed it. And so, I think it's a combination of growing up in it, and like I say, 8 years working, in New York City. But
that's too cool. Yeah. That's too cool. I'm gonna let you go to sleep, man. I mean, I can see it in your eyes, and he's fading. Right, Mark? You see it, right? It's 2 a.m. He's got dogs barking. He's got very comfortable couches behind him. In a minute, I'm gonna let you. I got 2 more questions for you, but then we're gonna cut you off, man.
Yeah. I'm noticing my battery. I have to.
There we go. Right there we go. So let me bring this up. If there are state limits on interest rates, how are some rates by credit cards over 36% still legal, and does that have any correlation to predatory loan interest rates? I think that's a question more for Mark and or Gus.
Yeah, a lot of there's an exemption for federally insured banks. Banks are allowed to charge rates in excess of the state usury limit levels. However, there are limits. You ever hear of payday lending? The New York Attorney General, as well as the New York City DA's office, has brought multiple cases against payday lenders who are not national banks, who are not exempt under the state usury laws for such actions. But the national banks can charge over the statutory limits. What we're talking about as far as predatory loans to small businesses, those predatory loans, these funds, these toxic lenders are not national banks. So So they fall squarely within the state usury laws. So that it is a difference. I mean, look, I look at my credit card statement all the time, and I'm like, I get sick.
Yeah.
But that's just how it goes. That's why everybody's looking for a lower interest rate, and there's all these different cards. But as far as the corporations are concerned, no, the state usury limits apply unless corporations aren't allowed to avail themselves of the state usury laws. That's state by state.
Makes
It goes
sense.
by state by state.
Makes sense. And then Dennis, this last question before we let you go, sir. Because it kind of relates to something you already talked about, right? And again, it says when will we see the first lawsuit against individual social media manipulators, fake news spreaders? I know our legal team is collecting information against them. And again, it's kind of like you were saying, right? Someone's out there creating and spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Yeah, watch out because we're coming for you, kind of thing. So I'll leave that to you to answer specifically, though.
Dennis, do you want to answer that one? Or?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say a timeline.
Yeah, I don't think there's a good timeline for something like that. I think it's kind of when we see the opportunity, we're gonna take it. Obviously, we do everything we can as the attorneys that are retained to protect the company from things like that. We've obviously taken some action. We've publicized, such as petitioning for the identity of certain bashers and people taking stands or positions against, especially DarkPulse. But there's really no way to tell when it's going to be the perfect time. We actually have a solid case against one of these bashers. But it's definitely it should definitely be known that if there is that opportunity is presented, then out of all of our clients, Dennis is going to be the person to step up and take action for sure.
Yeah, and it's what a lot of people don't realize, that sometimes the toxic debt goes hand in hand with the bashers that are killing you. The bashers are trying to lower the stock price for whatever reason, whether they're paid, they're connected, they want to make out as a retail investor. But the lower the price drops, the more stock these convertible note holders are going to get when they convert into the stock, when they convert their debt. But I can tell you, when's the first lawsuit? Well, we started with focusing on one handle. We have about 21 handles under investigation right now, and not just on Twitter. It's on StockTwits, iHub, a lot of different multiple platforms. We're working with an outside corporate surveillance and intelligence group right now that's collecting data, formulating charts for us. We will probably meet with Dennis once every couple of weeks to go over that, who the biggest violators are. And they're comparing, time and dates of posts with chart activity with the company's stock trading. So, you can run, but you're not going to hide. Oh, so I would suggest that everybody stop flooding and stop bashing. If you have specific information based upon public disclosures, you really should engage in a meaningful discussion on social media platforms, instead of using it for, either, personal vendetta, which will cross the line at some point. We already have 3 posters we feel have already crossed that line. We're working on the other 18 right now. And we're collecting data, not just now, but we're going back, a year and a half when a lot of this crap started. So again, if they think they're above the law, we can't find out who they are, guess again, because we already found out one. And we're going to find out everybody else. And if they think that there's freedom of speech, well, you cry fire once, it's okay. You cry fire twice, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Cry fire the third time, you are going to get arrested. So there's a certain pattern and activity and repetition that raises to the level of this is no longer free speech. You're gonna get whacked. So that's what we say in New York anyway. You're going to get whacked.
Listen, I'm going to make sure I keep all 3 of you on my good side. Listen, this is just conversation. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, I green lighted one account already. So they'll be hearing very shortly. I'll put it that way.
I wonder if they're on this chat here right now. Well, we won't go into that. Check this out. being cognizant of time, knowing again that it's 2:00 in the morning, but knowing that this conversation is continuing to evolve with some fantastic questions, I really think that there should be, or there could be, another segment to this. Dennis, when you have a more stable internet connection, when you have at least 4 hours worth of sleep on the body, when you've got another cup of coffee, that kind of thing. A number of questions have come in, but again, I'm going to table those. I know you can see the comments as well. So if there was something that you wanted to respond to briefly, or just in parting, if you could just tell the folks, again, where they can reach you in terms of the things that are going on with the company, and then we can pick it up at another time when you have a more stable technology connection.
I think it's just the lighting. I'm okay to stay if you need me. But I guess more importantly, in terms of some of the toxic notes, if you read the filings, we've taken those out of cash. So there's not this massive toxic notes that are ready to convert. Those have been cleaned out. We went with an S3 and an S1 filing. That's a little bit more control by the company. To try to reduce, downward pressure on the stock, and that's the whole idea. We just filed again that we're looking at an acquisition, so we have an M&A company to advise us on position. Some much better types of financing, and we're also working towards, an uplisting to a national exchange, and I guess it's a stay tuned on that. But a lot of good things have lined up. Like I say, we operate in 10 countries now. We have about 300 employees. We went from 0 revenue to nearly 4 million in revenue. And the whole idea is to continue driving the company, looking at more key acquisitions, and again, making this run for an uplist into an actual trading platform. So those are all in the queue, to steal your word.
Awesome. And I think just from what you just said about the future potential of being uplisted, I'm looking at a question that came here like from Chris Wood, right? He was talking about, where do you kind of guesstimate and see the stock price today or in the future? It's very hard to say, right? I mean, you've got the Batman vision, right? But you don't have to have the Superman goggles, right? I stole that from you, brother, right?
I mean, James, legally, he shouldn't answer that question.
Exactly.
Because we have no idea what the stock performance is going to look like tomorrow, a year from now, or whatever. If anything is just pure speculation, it's really not fair. I mean, it's a great question, and everybody wants to know that, and that's fine. And if we could answer it, I'd say, go ahead, Dennis, answer it. But as Dennis's lawyer, I would suggest he doesn't answer that.
No, I wouldn't speculate anyway. I mean, I'm in the company daily, and I couldn't judge what the price is going to be, I put now press release and been surprised that had no effect on the stock. So I'm probably the last person to ask, right? But I mean, I could tell you putting in the time, obviously, in the work.
Definitely putting in the time and the work.
I mean, look at this one again, 0 revenue, and there's, shareholders' equity now, and I continue to drive. So
awesome. I mean, it's almost like I don't want to go off of the top. Because the stuff you got to talk about is important too, right? But we got this guy who's on like 30% left of his phone battery. He's 5,000 miles away, and we got him. We might as well keep him going. But
I'm here. I mean, if I'm good, I mean, I know there's a lot of burning questions. I mean, I'd like to be able to answer. I have to sneak over and plug back in if that's okay.
I tell you what, let's do this. Let's let you do that. Go get a 5-minute cat nap and pull you off screen. I'm gonna let Gus go into his Edgar 101 conversation because again, I think that's valuable as well. So Gus, I hate to put you on the spot like that, but
most definitely.
So let's transition to that, folks. Keep the questions coming because again, I'm gonna put them in the queue, and if we can't answer them tonight, we will definitely answer them next time when we do. If I am fortunate enough to have these gentlemen on the panel and to have this discussion, it's been incredibly enlightening, right? Everything that Marcus said, everything that Dennis has said was probably something that you weren't expecting to hear, right? Just the transparency, right? And I think that's what's most valuable in terms of what we've talked about for this last 40 minutes or so. So that being said, Gus, talk to us a little bit about what you got to show for us today.
Yeah, of course. And James, don't ever worry about putting me in the spotlight. I'm ready for it. I'm always asking.
I'm sure Mark's done it, daily. I'm sure he puts his, yeah.
Oh, you know what? Actually, it's funny. On Monday, was it yesterday? We were talking about in our meeting. We were talking about who's going to court for something, and both me and Mark simultaneously said, "I am." And
he trained you
I
well,
looked.
huh? He trained you well.
I was like, "No, you're not. I'm going." Nice. I'm all for it. But anyway, so I guess so Edgar, if you want to, you could pull up my screen that I'm sharing, James. I'm
Awesome.
ready for that to be shared. So for those who don't know, I just Googled this, so I'm not a genius. So Edgar stands for Electronic Data Gathering Analysis Retrieval System. It's where you can find basically every SEC filing, anything that has to do with more or less any company. You Google it, just type in SEC Edgar, or just type in it's sec.gov/Edgar/search. And then you're going to come up with this homepage, right? Generally, what you're going to do is you're going to type in a company, or you don't always have to type in a company. You can search by keywords, date ranges, like basically any other search engine. Types of filings. There's a whole bunch of filters and operators you could use. I know I promised looking up GTII, Global Tech Industries. So that's what I'm going to do first. That's one way you could search. You could search just by looking at the ticker. If you do that, it's going to bring up every single filing, every 8K, 10K, 10Q, S1, S3, anything. What I really wanted to focus on was or I guess how shareholders could kind of help their CEOs, or I guess reach out to their CEOs and let them know or identify what's bad and what could be taken care of, and what are some things on a financial statement that might be able to be resolved and end up and help the company get into a better position. So there's obviously a few ways you do this. What a good general rule, I guess, would be is, for example, type in an instrument that is likely to be toxic or illegal. And what I mean by that is it might be illegal based on the terms because it's usurious, or it might be illegal because of the entity that issued the security, and because that entity is an unregistered dealer, let's say, right? So GTII did a little bit of research on my own. I know that they definitely have a convertible debenture somewhere in one of their filings that they mentioned. Right? So I'm going to look up convertible debenture. It's mentioned all of these times in this company's filings. We pull up a 10Q. You can go through all of the terms that you're looking at. So you see it here in their balance sheet. What we're going to look for is the terms of the debenture, which you're going to see in their statement, right? So here is where you'll see the day the company executed it, the principal amount, the stated interest, and this is what's really important, right? So you're going to see the stated interest, 10% interest per annum. That's 10% interest a year. It means they're charging 10% interest on this principal value of $74,800. And now is where it could get interesting, whether it's in terms of the lender being an unregistered dealer, or the lender being issuing these loans based on usurious terms. This is pretty common, like a pretty common disclosure. included a conversion right to be exercised anytime 180 days after execution of the note. That's obviously because of Rule 144. They're going to meet that exemption for unregistered securities. They're going to be able to tack back to the date of execution, which is November 27th of 2020. So 180 days after the execution of this note, there's going to be newly issued shares in the market. You're going to see an increase in volume. The retail shareholder is not going to know what's going on unless you look into these kinds of financial statements, which is probably why we get a lot of feedback or a lot of engagement on our social media saying that there is manipulation going on, there's naked shorting going on. It might not be naked shorting, especially if they can cover their positions with something like conversion. So seeing the conversion feature, the conversion right or conversion option, conversion feature, they might disclose it in a slightly different way depending on the company and depending on their Exchange Act counsel. It's really not material. All you need to know is that there's a conversion feature in this note, in this debenture, in this loan, whatever kind of security it might be, and that right here, convertible into common stock of the company at 75% of the market price. What does that mean? That's a 25% discount to market. That means for every dollar of stock that every dollar of debt that they're converting into common stock, they're only paying 75 cents for it. As you can tell, that alone is, I think that's a 50% return on that debt, which is at least a 50% interest charge. That's not including any of the stated interest that's actually accruing on the debt that's outstanding. That being said, right there alone, you're at 50%. Right there, that's usurious, and I think every single state in the country, if I'm not mistaken, don't hold me on that. It's more than double in the state of New York, as long as you include the stated interest. And once you're more than double, the lender's exposing itself to potential RICO liability. You can see even more interest here. Here's an original issue discount, which means this is a withholding, which means that they are subtracting that 6,800 from this 74.8 right off the top. And basically when that happened, it's called retained interest. And what will happen is that you consider the interest based on actually the net funding amount. So in this case, 6,800 minus that 7,400. I went to public school. I'm really bad at math. It's going to be somewhere around, I guess, 68 grand, right? And so now you would charge that principal amount to the net funding amount, which would just make the interest more offensive, which in this case, we don't even need to do because we've already hit that 50% threshold with the conversion discount alone. Going to add 10% onto that. We're at 60%. And now if we calculate this, who knows where we'll be, but we're going to be at even worse than 60%, which is more than enough. And I think, like I said, every state of the country, of course, absent the states that don't have usury laws, which are few and far between, but they exist. And this is really the, I think this is this says a lot, especially in terms of what might happen to a company stock, what might happen in the future to their issued and outstanding shares. Like I said, if you know that there's some kind of convertible security on the books, there in 180 days, there's going to be more common stock issued and outstanding. And it's almost guaranteed. Because another thing that they'll do is that these lenders will do is they'll impose prepayment penalties. So in the event that the borrower or the company does want to prepay, they're going to pay a penalty for it. So most likely they're not going to pay that penalty, and they're going to let that debt mature and allow the lender to convert, which will inevitably dilute and cause. And what will reflect or be reflective of that increased volume that a lot of these lenders might see, or a lot of retail traders might see on the markets. That's more or less pretty much everything I wanted to cover. Anything more than that is probably going to get a little bit too confusing. I saw a bunch of comments and questions come in, Maybe we can go through some of those.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my question, again, third person looking in, and I think for, I'm going to call it the people sitting in the back of the room, right? Like me. Regular investors having access to Edgar. Is that's plausible, right? We have access to it.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If you want me to, here, you want to share my screen again? I could show that. I'll just go to Google and kind of show how you might get there from Google.
See, I'll ask the questions that people will think are dumb.
Yeah,
because
for sure.
I don't mind.
So it's right here. It's open to everybody. Sorry. A little bit of a different page, but it's going to. Why is this in here? There it was. Sorry, I clicked on the wrong link first. So it's this one. SEC.gov, Edgar, search and access.
Awesome. Thank you. And
Edgar full search, and now you're here. And like I said, you can search either by company. What I do, what we'll do, like I said, to evident or to show a significant amount of like buying, selling activity, is we'll search right by lender. Whoever we're in litigation against, we're going to type that name in. And then instead of a certain company's disclosures coming up, we're going to see every time that lender was disclosed in a certain filing. If you look as of recently, you're going to notice that, especially in the GTII scenario, in that example, it said that convertible debenture was taken out with a corporation. These lenders know exactly what they're doing, and they want to make sure that they're not disclosed in these companies' filings. So they'll make sure that the company won't disclose the name of the lender that has that note. They'll just disclose that the lender, that the company took out a note with a company or with a corporation or with an LLC, for example, which is an interesting thing. I just realized that only a couple of weeks ago, actually. But it's like Mark was saying before, these guys will make sure that they are doing anything they can to stay ahead of the curve. And if they need to manipulate something or change something a little bit along the way and make it that much harder for somebody to kind of chase them down and prove something against them, they're going to throw every single roadblock and mess and try and throw every kind of wrench that they can into what's going on. So.
Awesome. Again, speaking to the value of having proper litigation, especially when you're a CEO, when you're firm working out there in the industry, we have either hit the big time or we got someone who looks like we got the Federal Bureau of Investigation here, or at least someone who has got that name and got that emblem. So we're making waves. So Hicks New Media, Basile law firm, and DarkPulse have reached to, and that's either a good thing or it's a bad thing. I'm gonna leave it at that. But I see someone who was logged in as the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I do want to ask a couple of other questions, Dennis, since you're still here and you got your system plugged in and you got a better connection, it looks like, because again, it looks like these were questions that were geared towards you. So I want to take advantage and utilize your time, sir. It's from Jack Cunningham. When do you plan on starting the share buyback announced a while back? And why not start it when the stock was cheaper? Because I don't think we will see DPLS that low again.
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of questions. It's hard to really discuss the buyback because it's so heavily regulated, more regulated than any other action. Because we could be also accused of manipulating the stock, right? If we're saying we're going to buy back shares at a certain price, or so, you have to be really careful. I was going to say system, but the buyback was approved by the SEC. We put all the proper filings, and it's just going to come down to putting money into play and deciding what's the right action. It's either maybe taking some debt off the books, or it's the share buyback, or it's kind of like a case by case basis. So it's really hard to give insight to that.
Makes sense.
Without maybe crossing the line. So it's a little hard to answer.
Makes sense.
But it's in play. Say that's sure. It was put in there in good faith. is really what it is. It's a mechanism we look to utilize, but I can't really hint at what we're going to do with that.
I'm just going to say third person looking at it again. Just the fact that the question was brought up and you stated that it's still in play, right? It's not something that has been swept under the rug.
Sure.
Then I think that will answer again. I can't speak for the investors or anything of that nature, but that's just the confidence that you're still working on. And so at least we were able to broach the conversation. So, and then for Mr. Basile, any way we can rush DarkPulse court, because every day we wait, it's hurting us. We need quicker courts results because there is no guarantee DarkPulse will recover from the first fire effort. And that's an interesting question, right? And again, only you, Mr. Basile, can answer that question, I guess, at this time.
Well, look, you never know what a court's position is going to be, what position they're going to take on any certain issues. You can expedite certain processes, but you have to have the right set of facts and the right circumstances and relying on the right law to do that. Right now, we should have some activity in that first fire case, I think in the next week or two. And once the public filings are in that case, you'll be able to better determine how much longer this case is going to last. We don't expect any of these cases to wrap up quickly, other than maybe the case in Minnesota, because that case is in its last lap of a 5-lap race, and we're going to be making a couple of motions in that case to dispose of that case relatively soon. The other cases, these things have a life of their own. It's up to the judge. It's up to the opposing party. So we really can't say, other than I can tell you, your sense of urgency is not lost on myself, nor is it lost on Dennis. Dennis would like to get these things done and out of the way as soon as possible, because he has much bigger fish to fry. He has got much bigger deals to work on, we're just trying to clear the brush for him right now, so we can clear the pathway for him to do a lot of things, actually to do everything he wants to do. So,
awesome, thank you very much. One last question here, and they've asked the question twice, so I even want to know because I'm compelled to hear it, and I don't know what EHAB is, but Atreyu Trades is asking, talk about the second trip to Egypt and the legend EHAB. Is that am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, that's
probably an insider bit of a little insider information there. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, he owns EEMW, and we just signed a joint venture agreement with them. We're creating an Egyptian company, and we're going after the infrastructure market in Egypt. And the question is the relationship. I think I met EHAB about 10 years ago up in Canada at a government-sponsored event, and we've been in and out of touch over the last decade. And really, since the president of Egypt came in about 3 years ago, he's just been on a tear in terms of rebuilding and renewing Egypt. And they have 17 smart cities slated to be built. And I'm pretty much just outside of New Cairo, where again they're building this massive city for over 5 million people are going to live there. So just the opportunity was here, the timing was right, and we put together a joint venture. And I've been in Egypt for the last 2 weeks, and yeah, EHAB and I have just lighting the town on fire in terms of business.
I love it. So, awesome.
Yeah.
Folks, this has been 75, almost 80 minutes of fire, right? I mean, again, you're not going to get this panel, this mind share, I think, in a lot of places, and to still have the majority of folks that I think started with us when we went online to still be on with us at this time. So, I take it that means that this conversation resonated with the community. So we will continue to have these types of discussions. Again, Gus, always look forward to having you on. Again, I'm calling it the Edgar 101, and that background that you gave there. Just again, for us, like I say, sitting in the back of the room, having that insight, that was incredibly valuable. Mark Basile, look, I mean, this guy right here talking about, he doesn't come on and do a lot of interviews, but when we turned the lights on and passed him the microphone, just the floodgates of information were just amazing. So wanted to say publicly, sir, thank you for that insight. Thank you for that information. And just thank you for what it is that you and your firm are doing. Right? I can tell, again, that's just definitely the good work. So appreciate you also for joining tonight.
Thank you.
Dennis O'Leary. Oh, dude, I it's kind of like I want to hang out with this guy, right? Because the work that you're doing, I mean, it just sounds so refreshing. It sounds so relevant. And again, thank you for also taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know, again, it's 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., whatever the case may be, where you are locally right now, and pausing and coming on and having this conversation with my audience is incredibly refreshing, incredibly valuable. I would love to, again, like I said earlier, have you back on so we can recapture some of these questions that are still coming in when you're at a different stage of the organization, a different stage of some of the projects, different stages, some of the litigation activities as well, right? And just talk about some of the goodness that's happening. So I'm gonna put that out there, and you don't have to answer. I'm not gonna put you on the spot right now, but just put that out there.
Yeah. I was gonna invite you because I'm headed to LA. I'll be there on Sunday for the Oscars. So, and I'm at an after party.
I just left San Diego. I can book a flight in like 2 minutes. Right.
There you go. I'm gonna email you some information and get you on the guest list if you'd like to come down.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for that. Atreyu, I appreciate you as well for that super chat. Appreciate the support. Community, look, this is what we do, right? If you found value in this conversation by having Basile Law Firm, by having DarkPulse on as a conversation, let somebody know, right? Again, we're speaking at the 35,000 foot level about just, again, the relationship of having proper representation for organizations and the value of that. Dennis O'Leary went into some specifics in terms of what he's doing with the organization as well. So hopefully you found value in that. Gentlemen, be good to yourself, and I will talk to each of you soon. Dennis, I'll see you on the red carpet.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, be well.
Take
care.